Good evening, everyone. This is Mike. Welcome back. I'm going to make a response video to a chat topic that my friend Ian, also known as All Things Film, has introduced. And let's see, what's the question? How does he put it? Are there any films that we didn't like when we first saw them that we changed our mind on later on, or changed our minds about later on? And the reverse also. Are there any films we liked when we first saw them that we changed our minds about later on and started to dislike? So, all right, good chat topic. Something that a lot of us have talked about before. And I'm just going to talk about one film, just one film, concentrate on that. And it's a film that I didn't so much dislike as I hated it. I absolutely hated everything about it. It made me angry when I was sitting there watching it. The only reason I was sitting there watching it and not walking out was because I was with two other people that I had brought and I had to take them home. So, all right, going back to the year 1995, Leaving Las Vegas, starring Nicolas Cage in the film that won him an Academy Award for Best Actor. Directed by Mike Figgis, co-starring Elizabeth Shue. Okay, so 1995, went to see this at the movies, not knowing what to expect, as most of the time we don't. Let's see, I was 1995. I was 44 years old. I don't know why that makes any difference, but it's a long time ago. And so it was one of the most downbeat, ugly, depressing, what I consider to be pointless films ever made, filled with unhappy people, unlikable people, misery. Oh, I mean, just and as I said before, I went with two friends, and I was the driver that night, so I had to take them home. Otherwise, if it had just been me, I would have gotten up and walked out. Or if they had driven me there and I could walk home, I would just say, good night, I'm leaving. But I couldn't do that, so I had to watch the movie. I remember one of my friends thought it was an absolute masterpiece. He was praising this film while the rolling credits were ending, or the end credits were rolling, I should say. And he was going on and on about how great it was. The other friend had sort of mixed feelings, but he kind of felt the way I did. He didn't like it very much, but he didn't hate it the way I did. And so we started having a nice little discussion, just sitting there waiting for the credits to end. And the discussion continued as we got up and walked toward the lobby. It got louder. It got more heated. By the time we got to the lobby, my friend and I, the one who didn't agree with me at all, who loved the movie, we were reaching the point where it was turning into a shouting match. But we got over it, and people were looking at us like we were crazy, which we were, obviously. But we got over it, got in the car, calmed down, and it didn't ruin our friendship. So, all right. So, all these years later, I found a used copy of this for, I think, $3 or something like that, and thought, okay, it's time for a reappraisal. For $3, I can't go wrong. If I still hate it, I can just give it to Goodwill. But I ended up, well, I did like it. It still wasn't a pleasant experience. It was a very dark, negative, visceral experience filled with sadness. But I appreciated the film for the brilliant way it told the story. Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen this, Nicolas Cage plays a man named Ben Sanderson who is living in LA, and at the beginning of the film, he's a screenwriter who has just been fired from his job and handed an envelope with severance pay. We find out that he has already lost his wife and his young son, and now his job because of his alcoholism. So he decides to, first of all, in a series of montage of scenes where we see his life at home very quickly, he burns a lot of his possessions and his clothes, and then he takes off in his car with liquor bottles, and he drinks his way to Las Vegas. His goal in life now is to go to Las Vegas and drink himself to death. So he does that. He gets to Las Vegas, and one of the first things he does when he pulls into town is he's so drunk that he runs a red light, and he almost runs over a woman who turns out to be a prostitute, played by Elizabeth Shue. Her name is Sarah. And, of course, she confronts him. She said, you just ran a red light. That means I walk, you stop. Are you sorry? So she gives him this little snarky exchange there, and he notices her. She's very, very beautiful, very sexy, and he notices her and he thinks about her a lot. Their paths cross again because he's looking for her, and they end up going out. First, he pays her, but then it becomes sort of a relationship, and they find it. These two very difficult people find each other and start to fall in love. And she has issues of her own. She's been a prostitute for quite a while. She's good at her job. She's very confident. She's proud of what she does. But she also happens to be working for, what's his name? Yuri, the deranged Latvian pimp who beats her up and takes all of her money, and hers is not a completely 100% pleasant life. So the movie becomes a character study of each one of these people and the relationship that forms between them. And it's fascinating. It's brilliantly done because we watch this man who is determined to destroy himself, a woman who seems to be looking for something to hold on to, even if it's something that she knows is going to make her miserable. And in the completely artificial environment of Las Vegas with all the neon lights and the people who, most of the people who are from out of town, they're just there for business or gambling or drinking or looking for prostitutes. It's insane, and it's so beautifully done. It's done sort of like kind of a film noir type atmosphere where you see these people, you know that they're doomed from the very beginning. You know that already, that there's no hope for them, and you just watch them slide down and down. And it's interesting that the relationship these two people form starts out to be very unconventional. Ben tells Sarah, he said, look, one thing you can never do is tell me to stop drinking. And she pretty much accepts that. And she says to him, you have to accept my way of life as a prostitute, and you can't criticize me for it. So they both agree to these terms, but very quickly their relationship ends up being sort of like any other normal man-woman relationship. They start getting jealous. She decides that he needs to take care of himself and go see a doctor because she's decided that he has to live. And he's getting very jealous of the fact that she's going out with other men, so he finds another prostitute. It's fascinating, and I don't know why I can appreciate it now, whereas I couldn't appreciate it back in 1995. And I was thinking about it a lot, and it could be because back then my life was very different. My life was filled with a lot of stress and a lot of tension, and the last thing I wanted to do when I went to the movies was to be completely, utterly miserable watching unhappy people destroy themselves. I just didn't have the patience for it. I didn't have the intellectual capacity or desire to spend my time that way, and that's why I couldn't appreciate it. Now, I guess I'm more relaxed, and I just look upon it in a completely different way, and that's pretty much all I can say. It's beautiful to look at. It's dark and very expressionistic. It has incredible music. Now, Mike Figgis was the director. He also directed films like a couple of films that I like, Stormy Monday, which is another film noir, and Time Code, which is a very unusual film that I would like to see again. Mike Figgis also composed a lot of the music, which is very dark, dreamy jazz music, very expressive. And there are also musical performances by Sting. Sting sings 3 standard songs. One is called Angel Eyes. These are all songs from 40s and 50s. Angel Eyes, My One and Only Love, and It's a Lonesome Town. And there's also a great performance by Don Henley from the Eagles. He does an incredible version of Come Rain or Come Shine. So the music is very expressive, and it works with the atmosphere going on, the acting scenes. There's one incredible scene where Ben and Sarah are out in a casino, and they're sitting at a blackjack table, and there's a young woman who's dealing the blackjack, and they're all kind of laughing and conversing and having a drink, and everything seems to be fine. The camera is looking down on them, so we're kind of far away from them. We can't hear what they're saying, but everything seems to be going all right. And then a waitress comes up and asks them, looks like she's asking him, "Do you want more drinks?" And there are a few words exchanged between the waitress and Ben, and then something she says sets him off, and he starts saying, "What?" And he starts yelling. He gets up, turns over the table, starts throwing things around, starts yelling and screaming, and right away the security guards are rushing in and they're trying to drag him out of the building, and he starts wailing and screaming. And while this is going on, it had this moody kind of jazz tune going along with it, and then the music starts wailing along with him, and you can't tell which is which, the music or his voice. It's really incredible, very, very effective. But again, it's hard to watch. Well, in a way, it's hard to watch because there's just so much about this film that's going to make you really depressed. So, what else do I want to say about this? Not only do we have Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue, we also have a lot of interesting people who have either supporting roles or they just have very small kind of bit roles where they show up. You have, let's see, well, Julian Sands is the guy who plays Yuri, the deranged pimp. He's very good. Laurie Metcalf is in it. She has a nice little supporting role. She's always very funny. We have Danny Houston, John Huston's son. He's in it very briefly. Julian Lennon shows up as a bartender in a biker bar. It's really cool to see him. Bob Rafelson, the director. Lou Rawls shows up at the end as a cab driver. Xander Berkeley. Mariska Hargitay is in it. She plays a prostitute very briefly, and she's gorgeous. I always like to see her. Steven Weber, Richard Lewis, Mike Figgis is in it himself. Let's see. I guess that's about it. This is all I want to say. One thing that's interesting about this movie, and I never knew this until I was reading about it on Wikipedia, but it's based on a novel, a semi-autobiographical novel by a man named John O'Brien. He wrote the book, and after he sold the rights of his book to make it into a film, he committed suicide. That's very, very sad. So another reason to be very strangely affected by this whole project here. But if you've never seen Leaving Las Vegas, I can give it a very strong recommendation. But don't watch it if you're in the mood to have a good time, because it's not going to make you happy. But if you want to see great performances by everybody involved and to watch a beautiful film, beautiful to look at in its darkness and in its expressiveness. It reminds me a lot of the movie Chinatown by Roman Polanski. It's similar in the mood and the tone and the way it looks, and the fact that Chinatown also has a very ugly, very negative story. But of course, we don't know that until almost till the end of the film. We don't know how ugly the story is. In this film, you know it from the very beginning. So give it a chance, and if you have seen it, let me know. All comments are welcome. Thank you for watching, folks. Good night.